There's something about English forests that just feel enchanted. Like they're hiding old magic between the trees. Think about the woods in The Wind and the Willows, where mole and rat go adventuring. Not scary, but cosy, full of secret paths and good friends. Or Winnie the Pooh's 100-Acre Wood, with its honey pots and thoughtful bears. Even the forests in old fairy tales, the kind where fairies peek out from under the leaves and everything smells like moss and possibility. These stories make the English woods feel like a gentle kind of magic, safe, slow, and full of wonder. And real forests, well, they've got stories too. Not always full of bears and talking donkeys, but still old and quite full of life. So, let's just lie back, take a deep breath, and wander through the very long, leafy history of English forests. Slowly, like we're strolling along a soft woodland path, listening to the bird song, with nothing to do but notice. Long, long ago, before the Romans ever built roads here, before there was a London, or a king, or a cup of tea even, England was almost entirely forest. Not quite the kind of forest you might be picturing. Not all dense and dramatic. There were towering trees, yes, but also open glades and marshy bits, winding rivers and stretches of grassland. It was a big green jigsaw puzzle of different habitats. We call this wild mess of nature the wild wood. This ancient woodland covered most of what we now call England. Oak, elm, lime, hazel. Trees with names that sound like they belong in bedtime stories. And underneath them, deer, boar, wolves, and tiny scurrying things. Birds in the branches, mushrooms in the shade. It was alive, this place. Buzzing and chirping and rustling. But it wasn't untouched. Even way back in the Mesolithic times, that's over 10,000 years ago, people were already shaping the forest in small ways, making paths, clearing glades, hunting. By the time the Neolithic folk rolled around with their early farming tools and ideas, they started cutting down patches to grow crops. Not huge swathes, just little by little. A clearing here, a bit of grazing land there. The forest was changing, bit by bit, but it was still vast, still mysterious. Then came the Romans, marching in with their roads and sandals and serious looks. They brought order, at least in their own minds. Built towns, chopped more trees, introduced new plants and animals. They liked things neat, the Romans. Straight roads, useful trees. But even they couldn't tame it all. The forests remained pockets of wilderness. After the Romans packed up and left, the Anglo-Saxons came. They lived closer to the land, their villages often snuggled up near woods, not just for timber, but for food and fuel and pigs. Yes, pigs in the woods. They practiced something called pannage, which is such a sleepy sounding word. It means letting your pigs root around the forest floor for acorns and beech nuts. Imagine that. Chubby little pigs snuffling in the leaves. A forest echoing with grunts and the rustles of branches. And that brings us nicely to the idea of forest as more than just trees. In medieval England, a forest didn't mean a place with lots of trees. It was actually a legal term, a special area set aside by kings for hunting, especially deer. Royal forests. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? But these forests could include villages and fields and farms too. It was all about who had the right to hunt. The forest laws were strict and kind of wild. Only the king could hunt certain animals. If you were caught taking a deer, big trouble. Even gathering firewood was restricted. For ordinary folks, these laws were a pain. But the forests themselves, still magical, still full of life. Let's stop here for a moment. Take a slow, deep breath. Imagine a forest in, say, the 12th century. Sunlight dappling through oak leaves. A soft breeze. A distant clatter as someone gathers kindling. Maybe a knight clanking on horseback. Maybe a sleepy fox, half watching from the undergrowth. You can almost hear the leaves whispering. So, moving gently forward into the late Middle Ages, the forest began to change again. More people meant more villages, more farms, and more need for timber. Wood wasn't just for building houses. It was for fires, fences, carts, tools, everything. And so, trees kept falling, bit by bit. But forests weren't just chopped down and forgotten. People cared for them, managed them. There's a lovely word for it. Coppicing. It means cutting trees down to stumps, then letting them grow back. A renewable resource before anyone was using that phrase. Hazel was a favourite for this. You'd cut it, and a few years later, it would sprout new, straight stems, perfect for firewood, hurdles, and even arrows. This wasn't the wilderness being destroyed. It was more like a slow dance between people and trees. The forest was still alive, still full of deer and birds and sleeping insects, and stories, always stories. Even into Tudor times, the royal forests remained. Kings still rode out in grand hunts, cloaks flapping, horns blowing, but common folk, well, they kept sneaking in to gather berries, to hunt rabbits, to find firewood. Some did it secretly, others did it out of need. The forest was too useful to ignore. One of the most famous royal forests, Sherwood, became legend, of course, thanks to Robin Hood. Whether or not he was real, and he probably wasn't quite as jolly or accurate with a bow as the stories say, his tale caught on for a reason. It's about justice, and greenwood freedom, and maybe a little wish that the woods themselves could look after us. By the 17th and 18th centuries, things got a bit more industrial. Timber was needed in serious amounts for shipbuilding, for charcoal, to fuel ironworks, for all the busy, clanking parts of the process. The forests shrank further, some disappeared entirely. but some survived. Quietly, patiently. Let's lie still again and picture one of those survivors. An old English woodland. Maybe Epping Forest with its ancient oaks and beech trees. Maybe the New Forest, full of ponies and thickets. The air cool and still. The leaves rustling just a little. A squirrel hopping along a branch. A robin watching you from a holly bush. Everything slow. Everything gentle. By the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution had changed everything. Cities grew, factories hummed, and railways stretched across the country. More trees were cut, but something else happened too. People started to miss the green. They started to long for it. Poets wrote about the woods. Painters tried to capture the dappled lights through branches. A quiet love for forests was rekindling. And so, in the 20th century, the idea of conservation began to take root. The Forestry Commission was created in 1919, not just to plant trees for timber, but to protect woodlands, to make sure future generations could still wander through quiet glades, still listen to birdsong, still fall asleep thinking of oak leaves. During the wars, many trees felled again. But afterwards, the forests were replanted. Some as neat rows of spruce or pine, others as mixed woodlands. Slowly, carefully, green returned. Walkers and dreamers and school children came back to the woods, feet crunching on paths, eyes looking upwards. Now, in the 21st century, forests are loved in a new way. They are protected, studied, rewilded. People plant trees for birthdays, for weddings, for the planet. Old woodlands are watched over, and new ones are gently grown, not for kings or timber alone, but for peace, for breathing, for beauty. And deep inside these forests, if you go quietly enough, you can still feel it. That hush. That green hush. Like the trees are remembering something, or whispering just to you. Maybe it's a story. Maybe it's a lullaby. Either way, it's enough to make you smile and drift off into dreams of moss and leaves and the soft dappled past. So, here we are, among the trees. But did you know that trees in ancient England weren't just plants? They were personalities. People believed trees had spirits. Old oaks were respected like village elders. Willows whispered secrets. Holly was thought to ward off evil. There was a kind of quiet folklore woven into every branch. And let's not forget the green men. Those mysterious, leafy faces carved into churches and barns, half human, half plant, peeking out from foliage. Were they guardians of the forest? Reminders of our connection to nature? No one knows for sure, but they keep turning up, watching silently. Even today, if you take a walk in a really old forest, maybe at dusk, when the lights turn soft, you might feel something. Not spooky, just aware. As if the trees know you're there. As if they've seen centuries of footsteps and are glad for the company. In spring, bluebells come, carpeting the ground in hazy blue, a sign that a forest is ancient, hundreds of years old. Bluebells don't spread quickly, they wait. They grow slowly, like stories whispered from grandmother to child. Then summer, rich and green, the canopy thick, like a leafy ceiling. You walk in shade, bees buzz, the air smells of earth and life. Birds flit above, and somewhere, hidden, a fox naps in a warm patch of sunlight. Autumn is gold and copper. Leaves drift down like slow confetti. The forest feels full, ready for sleep. Mushrooms push up through leaf litter. Everything is soft. The crunch underfoot is like a lullaby. Winter strips the trees bare, but even then, there's beauty. You can see the shapes of the trunks, the twist of the old branches. The forest rests. It dreams. You walk through it like a guest in a sleeping house. And always, the forest gives. Shade in the summer, wood for warmth, shelter for animals, berries, nuts, mushrooms, beauty for our eyes, calm for our hearts. There's a kind of time in a forest that doesn't tick like clocks do. It stretches and folds. It waits. A tree grows slowly, year by year. A bird builds a nest. A child carves initials in bark. Decades pass. The tree stays. And perhaps that's why forests help us sleep. They move slowly, breathe slowly. They remind us that it's okay to rest, that there's peace in stillness, that we're part of something deep and green and kind. So, close your eyes now. Imagine a path beneath your feet, leaves above, the softest breeze, the quiet song of an English forest humming just for you. Even now, in our modern world of glowing screens and busy minds, forests are finding their way back into our hearts. People visit them, not just to hike or explore, but simply to be. There's even a name for it: forest bathing. It comes from Japan, but the idea is simple. You wander slowly through trees, breathing, listening, not doing anything in particular, just being. And somehow, the forest welcomes you in. You leave feeling lighter. In English forests today, there are quiet trails you can follow for miles. Some lead to ancient trees, oaks that have stood for 800 years or more. They've seen empires rise and fall, heard the gossip of Tudor villagers, felt the breath of Viking winds, and they're still here. Their backs gnarled, their roots deep, their branches full of birds and breezes. If you rest against one, it almost feels like the forest is leaning back. And the animals, they haven't left. Foxes slink through brambles. Badgers shuffle through the dusk. Tawny owls hoot gently from hidden perches. If you're lucky and very still, you might see a deer step softly through a shaft of evening light, its ears twitching, its eyes wide and curious. Hedgehogs snuffle under the leaves, slow and purposeful. The forest doesn't rush, and neither do its creatures. And then there are tiny things. The mushrooms pushing through rotting logs, each one a quiet miracle. The lichens decorated ancient stones, pale green and grey. The beetles, the worms, the ants, going about their busy lives underfoot. The forest is a world in miniature, every inch alive with life and old secrets. Children still play in these woods, building little dens out of fallen branches, pretending to be explorers or woodland kings. Sometimes they bring stories with them of dragons hiding in hollow trees, or fairies dancing in bluebell glades. And the forest, patient and generous, becomes whatever they imagine. That's the real magic of it. It listens. In schools, teachers take children out for forest school sessions. Not lessons with chalkboards or desks, but ones where learning comes from mud and sticks and fire circles. Children learn to whittle, to light fires safely, to listen to birdsong, and to tell one tree from another. They laugh, they get muddy, they come home tired and glowing. The forest gives them space to grow. For grown-ups too, the forest can be a gentle teacher. It teaches patience. Trees don't hurry. They take decades to grow tall, and even longer to become ancient. The forest teaches us that not everything needs to be fast, to be meaningful. That sometimes the best things come from sitting still and noticing the sound of leaves in the wind, the way sunlight filters through branches, the soft give of moss beneath your feet. Many forests now are being rewilded. That means letting nature take the lead, removing fences, planting native trees, reintroducing animals that once lived there. Beavers are back in some parts of England, building dams and creating wetland homes. Pine martens, rare and elusive, are returning to their old haunts. Even lynx are being considered for reintroduction. It's like the forest is remembering itself, piece by piece. Old woodland paths are being restored, connecting patches of forest like stitching a green quilt. These green corridors allow animals to roam again. They give walkers a sense of stepping into something timeless. You might start your walk on a gravel path near a town and end up an hour later in a quiet glade full of sunlight and birdsong, where the modern world feels very far away. And the names of these places, aren't they lovely? Ashdown Forest, Dean, Epping, Sherwood. Each name carries the echo of the past, of the Celtic tribes and Norman kings, of monks gathering herbs, of stories told by firelight. There's music in the syllables, a sense of place, a sense of peace. Some forests hold old ruins, stone walls eaten by ivy, broken abbeys wrapped in silence, places where monks once walked in quiet reflection. Now the forest has claimed them, softened their edges. Birds nest where bells once rang. Trees rise where pews once stood. And somehow it feels right. Like the forest is gently healing what time forgot. And then there's light. Forest light is different. In the morning, it spills through mist, silver and pale, At midday, it filters down in golden shafts, turning dust into sparkles. At dusk, it softens, everything edged into amber and blue. The forest is full of shadows, yes, but also full of light, a quiet balance. In winter, when the leaves have gone, the bones of the forest are revealed. You can see the twists and turns of the trees like dancers frozen mid-step. You can hear the creak of branches, the soft pat of a bird's wing, the hush of falling snow. The forest doesn't sleep completely. It simply rests, gathering strength. In spring, the forest yawns and stretches. Buds unfurl, birds return. The floor bursts with wildflowers. Everything begins again. And the trees, ancient and wise, welcome it all with grace. Another year, another cycle. Time in the forest is circular. Some trees have names. The major oak in Sherwood Forest, said to have sheltered Robin Hood. The Bowthorpe oak in Lincolnshire, over 1,000 years old. They're living in the history books. Their trunks have felt the hands of pilgrims, the footsteps of farmers, the songs of lovers carved in bark. Trees are generous. They give oxygen, shade, shelter, stories, and they ask for very little in return. Just space, just time, just respect. When people write about forests, they often reach for the poetic, and rightly so. There's something deeply human about trees. We've lived beside them for so long. Their rhythms have become our own. A forest isn't just a place. It's a feeling, a breath, a homecoming. And as you lie there now, eyes drifting shut, imagine you're lying on a forest floor, maybe underneath a beech tree, its branches like arms overhead. You feel the hum of the earth beneath you, the soft tap of a falling leaf, the rustle of a hedgehog nearby. You are safe. You are held. The forest doesn't need to speak. It simply is. It simply is. And that, in its own way, is the most comforting lullaby of all. So, let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. The forest will keep watch. It always has. And as the last light fades between the trees, remember, there have always been forests, long before roads and clocks and worries. And there will be forests still, long after. But for now, there is only this: a quiet glade, a gentle hush, and the ancient song of English woods singing you to sleep.